Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, and our ongoing study in Nature and Values by Edgar Sheffield Brightman, published in 1945. Chapter 1 gave us the condition that we must overcome, the condition of fragmentation and disunity. And now in Chapter 2, Professor Brightman is going to address his methodology, and his methodology is going to be one of phenomenology, where he wants to show us how he's going to arrive at that methodology of empirical but basically phenomenology. Let's begin with block 1 with nature and the real. And nature is defined as coming into being. Beneath the changes in nature, there is a constant order. Nature from the Latin means to be born. Nature from the Greek means to bring forth. Nature is a coming into being coupled with the idea of law and permanence. Nature is also considered a worldview from the German Weltanschauung, and William Temple in 1934 posited nature as world process. John Dewey, 1925, said nature was the totality of coherent phenomena. So note 3, nature as the whole of reality. Spinoza treated nature, substance, and God as synonymous. All is in God. Edward Ames, 1929, posited nature as synonymous with the real. Brightman therefore says our task is to remove this ambiguity concerning the definition of nature. We shall peel back this ambiguity and try to reach a better definition of nature. In block 2, we take a look at the character of sensation, the subjective side. In nature as sensate, Kant posited nature as the object of all possible experience. By this he meant that nature is that of which we learn through our senses. Nature is an aspect of total reality. Brightman says moral law, however, is not part of nature. It is not experienced by the senses. Webster's definition of nature is that it's a physical reality, excluding the mind, excluding the mental. So note 2, nature as distinct. Science is directed toward what is sensate and observable. Woodbridge in 1940 posited a distinction between personality and nature. Tennyson posited that knowledge comes through the senses. Therefore, note 3, block 2, note 3, that which is sensate yet distinct, under further consideration, methodology is usually fourfold. It usually includes observation, hypothesis, experiment, and verification. Nature is implied in sensate experience, but Brightman says that does not mean that it is fixed being, because we're dealing with both sense data and pure thought. Nature is the area approached by the senses, but immediate experience is always a process of conscious attention. It involves personality. So Brightman says we cannot deny the mental character of sensation. So we have the objective side being discussed in block 1, the subjective side discussed in block 2. Now we move on to the transitioning to the realm of ideals and values in block 3. Begin with consciousness. Consciousness is not a natural science. We cannot deny the reality of the experienced facts of consciousness. Facts of mind are not sensate. They are reasoning, memory, self-identification, and creative imagination. Conscious self-experience must be addressed. But nature and mind will always be closely related. Nature acts as causation on mind. We posit a distinction between mind and nature. Nature is that which is observable through sense. Mind is non-sensory experiences of personality, and that will include ideals and values. Brightman says we must grant the validity of logical processes of the mind. That takes us to the realm of ideals, the realm of values. We must begin with subjects who intend to communicate with each other. Sensate objects are the meaningful reference of mind. They're the meaningful reference of mental activity. Facts must be coupled with purposeful ideals. Sensate experience is distinguished from self-conscious experience, says Brightman. And he said, understanding this, we are provided with an empirical basis for thought about that which is beyond the natural, the supernatural. In other words, we have a method of phenomenology. Nature provides experimental discovery and verification, but no sight into values. No insight into the side of personality. So, the empirical method will include the empirical personality, Brightman says. It should. The phenomena of personality should be included. Therefore, his empirical method is going to be one of phenomenology, which we know from previous studies that he did take up that perspective. So we have in this lesson the groundwork for his conclusion that his method is going to be one of phenomenology. Therefore, it will be empirically based. It will include the usual steps of observation, hypothesis, experiment, and verification in Block 2, but it's going to include the phenomena of personality as well. It's not just going to be materialistic, so it's going to be observation that includes mental phenomena as well, and a hypothesis concerning mental phenomena as well, and an experiment of the interaction between the sensate and the mental, and then the process of verification. So it will include those 4 steps, but it's going to be an empiricism that is not simply materialistic. It's going to be an empiricism that is truly phenomenology. And we know this from previous studies with Brightman and from Professor Bowen as well. So the problem of fragmentation, the problem of disunity, the problem of removing the ambiguity in our definition of what is the real, and through that unveiling to come to terms with a true definition of nature and a true definition of personality and a true definition of their interaction, and through this process of true definition arrive at a phenomenology that becomes a basis for reaching the unity that we strive for. That's what Brightman is seeking to present in this manuscript. He's given us his human condition of disunity, of fragmentation, which is subjective and objective because there's the experiential side of duality that has to be addressed as well. And now in this lesson, in this chapter, he says that the plane of the realm of ideals and values is beyond the sensate. The sensate cannot reach this plane of the ideals and values of life. We must include within empirical study the subject and personality. In other words, mind. We must include the concept of mind along with the concept of nature. The two must be discussed together as interrelated. He says they are always closely related. There's always sensate data, but there's also pure thought. We have to examine sensate data and pure thought in an interrelationship that'll move through our process of observation, hypothesis, experiment, and verification. So it becomes that kind of an approach. And all of that is given in block 2 there. In fact, I'll read through it again, but look at block 2, note 3. That which is sensate yet distinct. The further considerations. Methodology usually is fourfold: observation, hypothesis, experiment, and verification. Nature is implied in sensate experience, but that does not mean that it is fixed being. It can be a coming into being. It can be a becoming. We are dealing with both sensate data and pure thought together. Nature is the area approached by the senses, but immediate experience always includes the process of conscious attention. We cannot deny the mental character of our sensation. We cannot deny the subjective mental character of sensation. That really is the summary section of the entire chapter. That block 2, note 3 kind of gives you a summary of what he's really trying to key in on here. And then in block 3, in note 3, the concluding statement there, if you look at E and F, I should say D, E, and F. Block 3, note 3, D, E, and F. Sensate experience is distinguished from self-conscious experience that provides us with an empirical basis for thought about that which is beyond nature, the supernatural. In other words, we can take up phenomenology. Nature provides experimental discovery and verification, but not insight into values. We must give due force to the mental as well, to personality. So it will be an empirical method, but it'll be empirical method as phenomenology. And we know from all of our previous studies that this is the approach that Edgar Sheffield Brightman takes, and we know that it is the approach that Borden Parker Bound took with his metaphysics. It was phenomenology. His ethics, that was phenomenology, and his theism was phenomenology based. All three were based in phenomenology, and we had composite pictures of those phenomenologies. And with our previous lessons in Brightman, we did the same type of investigation. He always has a phenomenology basis for his approach to the problem, and in this case it's the problem of nature and values, and how do you transition from the plane of nature and sensate existence to the realm of, or the plane of values and ideals. We have a very solid chapter on methodology here. It was chapter 2, pages 28 to 49. And next time we'll pick up chapter 3, beginning with page 50.